In his prior roles, he worked as chief evangelist for Google+. He led the marketing team for the company's flagship advertising product, AdWords, in the Americas and Asia Pacific, and the marketing team for AdSense, Google's publisher-facing product. Before joining Google, he was on the management team of 2 Silicon Valley venture-funded startups. While a consultant with McKinsey and Company, he worked on engagements helping the management teams of large corporations improve business performance and maximize revenues. He has also led information technology projects for global corporations in India, in China. Don't help China, what are you doing? India, just do India. India and the United States, we need help with that too. Okay, he earned his bachelor's degree in electronics engineering from the National Institute of Technology in
Thank you. Hello, Houston. I feel like a stand-up comedian moving this away and stepping up here. But keeping up with Rajiv's trend and logic, I have to admit that I still have hair and I'm not married. Well, I want to actually start off by asking a question to you. How many organs are there in your body right now? How many organs are there in your body right now? Give me a shot. Give me some answers.
20. 20.
See, no one knows. And this, yeah, Google it. Well, I asked a couple of doctor friends of mine, and they weren't sure either. This important instrument we use every single day. So I did Google it. I asked Miss Google, and Miss Google told me there are 78 organs in the human body. So today I want to introduce you to the 79th organ. Not created by nature or by God or whatever your belief system is, but created entirely by human beings. This little device here. This is now the 79th organ in our body. Now let me introduce you to why it's like an organ. You touch it, it has a skinned response. It's got ears, you speak to it, it understands you. It's got a mouth and a voice because it talks back to you. It's got eyes, it recognizes objects, people around you. And it's got a brain because we call it a smartphone, and I know my smartphone is a lot smarter than I am. And clearly, it must have a mind, spirit, and consciousness. Otherwise, why else would each of you walk around with it so close to your heart? Sleep with it next to your bedside. And most importantly, when I was standing at the dinner reception today, I saw most of you engrossed deeply in prayer with your 79th organ. But all jokes apart, this is now the most pervasive technology in human history, and this is an amazing piece of technology that we've built, and coming out of companies like Apple and Google, etc. It's pretty remarkable. And what this little piece of electronics in the palm of your hand can do. Just today, I was able to book my ticket, check in, call for my taxi ride, and not only does the Uber come to you, point by point, turn by turn, you can actually look it on the phone, and it says it stopped at the signal, it's making the U-turns, coming towards you. Complete the check-in process, order coffee at Starbucks, pay for it, and then listen to music on the flight. All of this from this device. It's incredible what human beings have created. And this has become the most pervasive technology in human history. In January, we crossed an inflection point. There are 7.1 billion human beings on the planet, and now there are an estimated 7.2 billion mobile devices on the planet. For the first time, we reached the inflection point, which is fantastic. In fact, the power we put in the hands of human beings is incredible, and probably many of you in the room are involved, or you may have family members who are involved. So given the fact that human beings have done this incredible thing in such a short period, make this the most adopted technology, it's a tremendous feat. So let's give it a big applause to everybody working to make it happen. So all that is great news, but in the midst of it, here is a startling fact. 800 million people will starve today. That is the number associated with global hunger, 800 million people. So why is it that technologies like a 5-year-old technology, we've been so successful in putting it in the hands of so many people in such a short time, and there's this 5 million old technology called food production that we've just not been able to get into the hands of human beings like human beings. So the numbers are starting. 1 in 9 people, till today, have to deal with hunger. And just let me put that in perspective in human terms. Can one person at each table stand up, please? One person at each table. Anybody? Yes, please. One person at each table. Okay? Thank you for volunteering and being brave enough. So for the people who are sitting down, just look at that one person standing. What is happening in the world today is the equivalent of if at the end of this program, the whole table leaves for dinner and leaves that one person standing there, and they can't join you at the dinner, even though there is enough food available for that one person. That is the tragedy of it all. This is what is happening. This is what we are doing to each other today when we allow 800 million people to starve. When we leave that one person at the table while the rest of us go and enjoy, even though they can be quit. So please take a seat. Thank you. And the problem is it is not that there is not enough food in the world, because that is a problem we have solved as human beings. Nature has taken care of it. There is enough food for everyone who starves today. And it's born, that's why the founder of Akshaya Patra, when he spoke recently in San Francisco Bay Area, as he put it, it is not a production problem. Nature has taken care of it, and human agricultural process has taken care of it. The problem is one associated with distribution. It's a lack of imagination. It is a lack of leadership. And it's unique to human beings. Isn't it ironic that a typical human being only needs about 3 pounds of food a day, and still close to 1 billion people will not get it today. An elephant needs about 500 pounds of food every single day. But you don't see elephants starving in nature, right? And why is that? Because elephant society is organized different from human society. Because every elephant can go to the forest, get its 500 pounds of food, and it leaves the rest of the food behind for other elephants to enjoy. Elephants don't have trade barriers, they don't have pricing controls, they don't have lobbyists arguing for it, they don't have wheat futures or mango futures that manipulate all of this. It is all these complex things that are created that deny such a fundamental human right, the right to eat well and be well. And this is why I marvel at what Akshaya Patra has done. You know, what they've set out to do, they've had the courage to step up to it and said, this is unconscionable that we allow it to happen every single day. And let's do something about it, and not do something on a small scale. What Akshaya Patra has done is respond to the situation in what I call a 10x scale using innovation and technology. And when you try to solve a problem, make it 10 times better than, find a solution that is 10 times better than what it was before and scalable, that's when you have a pathway to actually resolving this issue in one generation. And it is that approach that Akshaya Patra has taken that is near and dear to many people at Google, which is why Google, a lot of execs at Google support Akshaya Patra's work. Because Google also looks at world problems on a 10x scale. So maybe I'll take a minute to explain that the parallel philosophy that Google and Akshaya Patra saw. So I've had the privilege of working at Google for 9 years now. And when I started, there were just 2 products. You could search in a little white box, and little text ads ran next to it. There was no YouTube, there was no Chrome, no Android, no self-driving cars. And I've had the privilege of witnessing all of the innovation that comes out of Google along this time. And the founders of Google, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, right from the beginning, have always encouraged us to solve problems on a 10x scale, and they call it 10x innovation. And what they're saying is, just like Akshaya Patra's core mission, what they've established is that Google's core mission is to look at a large set of human problems out there and ask ourselves, can we use technology in a massively scalable way and improve this situation with a 10x solution. And the reason they keep talking about this 10x solution is that they say if we come into work every day at Google and improve things only by 10%, we still make progress. That is pretty good. Except it'll be an incremental improvement. And very soon we'll become a company of incrementalists. However, to challenge ourselves to solve a problem at 10 times the scale, make it 10 times better, 10 times faster, it forces into a paradigm that does not exist today. You have to be wildly creative, think out of the box. And if I give you an example, it illustrates what I'm talking about. Suppose, let's say, the primary mode of transportation for everyone here from Houston to get to San Francisco is by road. If you come and ask me to get you that 10% faster, I'm just going to build a better car that goes faster, more fuel efficient. But if you come and say, get me that 10 times faster, all of a sudden I have to think out of the box. Surface transportation does not work. Aerial transportation or strapping on a rocket to your back might be the kind of out-of-box thinking. I have to come up with a completely different solution. And this is how innovation is driven at Google. And I wanted to just give you one example and draw a parallel to what Akshaya Patra is doing. So one such problem that Google was looking at. So for a 10x innovation to come together, there are three things that have to happen. A big problem out there in the world that we're trying to solve. A radical solution, something that is not thought of before. And some sort of breakthrough technology for this radical solution to be implemented. So a few years ago, engineers at Google were looking at a piece of data that came from the National Transportation Safety Board, and that is every year 1.4 million children, 1.4 million humans die due to auto accidents. That is the population of San Francisco and Marin County put together. Every single year, it's like wiping out the entire population of San Francisco and Marin, and we start all over again next year. 94% of those deaths are caused by human error. Exactly. People fall asleep at the wheel, they get distracted, they text and drive. So this is a big problem, and how do we solve it? So the radical solution they proposed was, what if we take the human out of the picture? But that is preposterous. How can you have cars driving around without the human being in it? But the breakthrough solution, the breakthrough technology, the engineers argued that we can actually do it, because what do cars need to go from place A to place B? They need to know turn by turn. We already have it on our phones. Second, they need to know what's going on in the immediate vicinity, and we're already seeing it when the street view cars driving down the street within 16 cameras. So that is what led to this most amazing technology of a self-driving car, which is why often people wonder, how come it came out of a company like Google, that kind of innovation, and not some company in Detroit or in Hamburg? And just to give you a sense of how this technology works, if you haven't seen it, I know there's tests going on in Austin. I'm going to play a small video of actually the other one. So I'll introduce him. So Steve Mahan is not just any person. He's actually blind. He's the president of the Santa Clara Blind Association. So he's going on a test drive on the self-driving car, just to help you get a feel for how this technology comes together. So can you play the Steve video? Yali? Yeah, we can just stop it there. No, I think it's in the buffer, right? Yeah. So you get a feel for it. So in this one later on, he goes on to talk about what it means for a blind person to drive with the completely hands-free and just be in the car all by himself. And it's remarkable that we've created this. But this is what 10x innovation can get you to. And this is the approach that Akshaya Patra has taken, and we feel a sense of common kinship between our two organizations, in that Akshaya Patra saw this big problem, and the big problem is that there is a mass amount of starvation, especially among school kids, and that is having all sorts of impact on personal growth and development, not to mention kids are no longer staying in school because they have to help their parents find food. And regular solutions like let's solve it at 1 or 2 school level or just cook locally in the school that traditionally other organizations have done was clearly not going to work. So they looked at the big problem, much like Google does. And then they said, let's do a radical solution, which is figure out a way to do massively scalable kitchens and across the country, multiple schools. And that is what has led to the kind of technology-based innovative management approach solution that they built. But in order to have that kind of radical solution, you need breakthrough technology. And it's amazing with all of the engineering talent that leads this organization right from the top, IIT graduates who have come up with different technology solutions. So for example, we realized that a group of chefs rolling out chapatis in a kitchen is not going to be able to churn out the millions of kids that have to be fed. And they invented a chapati machine that can make 40,000 chapatis an hour. Just add this up, right? And that's what I mean by appropriate breakthrough technology to help implement a radical solution like this. And it's gone on to a state where now, as you've heard many times today, 1.45 billion children getting fed every single day, and at a very modest cost of 12 cents per child per day. That is 10x innovation at a scale. And by 2020, they want to get to 5 million or so. So this is amazing, incredible work that Akshaya Patra is doing. And more importantly, the reason I wanted to come and support Emily and the team and Deshan team here is I have a strong sense of personal connection of the impact it can have through my own life, my own family's life, of what the kind of work that Akshaya Patra is doing. And before I actually tell a personal story, I wanted to mention one more fact I asked Emily to mention. I was in Stockholm on Tuesday, and I released my first book. It's called The Internet to the Internet, and even my parents have yet to receive it. So I did manage to grab a few copies. I brought it here. So at the end of the dinner today, if when you come up and talk to me, if you're interested, grab a few copies and we'll sign a few copies, and it's priceless, which means that feel free to name any price for these books, and the money goes to Akshaya Patra. So let me get into this personal story of how I feel a strong sense of connection with this organization. And the way I relate to it in my own life is the impact that Akshaya Patra is having out there is the power of what I call education, the power of good nutrition, and I call it the power of a diet. So let me explain each one of those pillars as I relate to it. In order to do that, I have to actually tell you a small personal story and take you to part of my life. Can you just bring it up? And it goes back to this tiny rice farming village in southern India called Chittilanjeri. It's in Kerala, and okay, thank you. 2 people from Kerala. The rest are in Dubai. And I have a very soft spot for Chittilanjeri because it is my home village. Because this is where my grandparents grew up as poor rice farmers. We just go to the next slide. So just tap once. Yeah. So this is where my grandparents grew up as poor rice farmers, and this is where my parents also grew up as the children of poor rice farmers. One more click. And they had a very modest kind of life. They grew up without electricity. They grew up without running water, and they didn't get much of an education. They didn't go to college. The only education that they got, let me just go to click next slide, is going to a village, rural Indian village school in the village, and they got about 10 years of schooling. And it stopped with that. But they had aspirations for their kids, just like how parents anywhere in the world have. And thanks to those aspirations and making it important, they knew the power of education. Their 4 children, that is me and my 3 siblings, have gone on to get 10 college degrees, including 2 from Ivy League business schools, even though my parents had never set foot in America. And in one generation, the power of that education has created enormous amount of social mobility. But all of this education started from the roots of the kind of institutions that Akshaya Patra works with. Akshaya Patra primarily works in government schools around. And that is the education my parents got. That is the education that I got and all of my siblings got. And I studied in a government school in a small town called Kozhikode in southern India. Most of you would not have heard. And I know the power of that education that's propelled us forward and opened doors one after the other, whether it was getting an engineering degree or eventually ending up at IA or going to Wharton, working at McKinsey, doing startups, and now playing the role of chief evangelist at Google. That is just me. And there's a similar track that my brother can talk about as an executive at Nike, my sister can talk about the Federal Reserve. It all starts with originating with this kind of a modest setting, but it's education that is what propelled the family forward, without question. The second is the power of food. Even though our family was poor, they didn't experience starvation because there's one blessing that we had. Because the ovarian lottery, they were born, the whole family was growing up in Kerala. And Kerala, if you've been, is a very fertile land. So there was food available, but it's very basic kind of food because the land produced enough rice and coconuts and bananas. And that's what my parents grew up on. But as they tell the story, the only thing they got to eat the entire childhood was rice gruel, kanji as it's called in Malayalam. So this is what they grew up on. And as a result, even though they had nutrition, they didn't starve, it was not very high quality nutrition. And you can see it in the entire family. My mother, my uncles, my cousins, all of them are very short because, again, of the limited nutrition that they had access to. Other than the rice, there was not much else to eat. And one generation later, if I look at me and my siblings, we've grown up to normal height. And the next generation, my nephews and nieces, etc., again, with that social mobility, the nutrition situation has changed. And all of them are towering like at 6 foot tall. The power of nutrition and what it has done to both our physicality, as I call it, and our educational levels, staying in school. The third is simply the power of a dime, as I relate to Akshaya Patra. The power of a dime, I want to tell again my own personal connection as an immigrant. When I first arrived in this country, I landed at the San Francisco airport, and I was supposed to call a friend of mine, Rakesh, who was doing a PhD in Berkeley. I picked San Francisco because that was one person I knew. He was in my class in India, and he was doing his PhD at Berkeley. And he had told me to call him when I arrived here, to actually go to a payphone and call. And for those of you who think of a phone as a device where you order milk and watch YouTube videos and check Facebook status, back then we actually used to use it to punch in numbers, and a human at the other end would answer, and then you would have a live conversation. And you didn't carry the phone in the pocket, they were fixed on walls, and you would drop coins in. So I didn't know how many coins to drop. I went to the foreign exchange trade. I had $20 in my pocket, and he gave me a fistful of coins and notes, and asked him how many coins do I have to drop, and he said a few dimes probably would do, depending on where you call. So I took these coins and stepped outside, went to these payphones, and looked at the coin, hoping it would say dime, and I flipped it over. They didn't say dime. Instead, it said "ip pluribus unum." Something written in English, but I had no idea what it meant. So I flipped the coin over, thinking it would be of some help. And very helpfully on the other side, it said, "In God we trust." And that's how I began my life here, by putting my trust in God and dropping a bunch of coins without knowing whether it's dime or nickel or quarter, and making a call, and then he would pick me up. So I have a special relationship with the dime ever since. I have fond memories of it. And now coming to think, that humble dime that I used at the time is what? 12 cents per kid every single day? It's a tiny sliver of currency that almost has no value to any of us, has profound impact on a daily basis on every single child. Again, massively scalable solution at a very, very economic price is what Akshaya Patra has done, and it's commendable. So the impact that they are having on these schools, in that the kids are fed, they're more nutritious, it is changing everything from the height to the well-being, they're staying in school, is tremendous. And today we have two choices in front of us, as a group, as a community here. And the two choices work this way. Can the people who actually stood up, stand up one more time, please? Again, these are our two choices. Choice one, leave them behind at the table at the end of the program, and we go out and have an amazing dinner, even though there is enough food for them. Choice two, by supporting Akshaya Patra's work, we are actually embracing what I call radical inclusivity, saying no one in our human family should be left behind at the table, and we are going to take that person also with us. And the way we're going to do it, everyone now stand up. So now when you stand up, you're now one with that one person, right? And this is the radical inclusivity, saying together all of us can actually enjoy the sumptuous buffet that is available to every one of us. And in the process, that one person left standing is now actually a part of each one of your families at the table. And not only are there access to nutritious food, but it is changing the quality of life. It is changing the quality of education. And that is the second choice that is available when we make this decision, when we support the work that Akshaya Patra is doing. And the question I'm going to leave you with is what choice will you make today? Namaste.